everybody. This is Sharonda, and this is my podcast, Ancient Ancestry. And as I mentioned, with this new podcast, I will be going over ancient history in regards to the continent of Africa, as well as other countries and customs around the globe. And so I don't like to plagiarize, but I just did a little bit of research based on a website that I have listed here, and I'm going to read off the information that it has in regards to South Africa. Okay, so it mentions pre-colonial history of Southern Africa. South Africa has one of the longest sequences of human development in the world. It begins within 2 million years old hominid fossils. It mentions about human origins. South Africa scientists have been actively involved in the study of human origins since 1925, when Raymond Dart identified the tall child as an infant halfway between apes and humans. Dart called the remains Australopithecus africanus, Southern ape man, and his work ultimately changed the focus of human evolution from Europe and Asia to Africa. In many ways, this discovery marked the birth of paleoanthropology as a discipline. Today we know the Australopithecines represents the first human ancestors to walk upright, and they are only found in Africa. In South Africa, scientists usually find Australopithecine remains in breccias and dolomite. The majority were found through lime mining activities near Johannesburg. Lime was used to process gold at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century, and most lime mines here have exposed some breccias. This dolomite band contains some of the best known Australopithecine sites in the world. Chondrite, sartans, and Sturtfortans, for example, appear in every major textbook on human origins. Because of its richness, a large portion of the fossil-bearing zone has been listed as a World Heritage Site, known as the Cradle of Humankind. Recently, a new find from the cradle has made world headlines. Lee Berger and his team found the extraordinarily well-preserved remains of a juvenile male and adult female of a new species. The hominids had fallen down a deep sinkhole and were then covered by calcified sediment in an underground pool. The sediment dates back between 1.78 and 1.95 million years ago. Although many specimens have been found in breccias, the Australopithecines did not normally live in caves. They probably slept in the tropical forest galleries that stood along the river banks. They were probably omnivores, eating mostly plants and some meat, somewhat like chimpanzees. Their bones ended up in dolomite caves because they were hunted by leopard, hyena, and saber-toothed cats, which did use caves, or by accident, as the case of the recent discovery. Museum displays of human evolution are open to the public at Maropeng on the edge of the World Heritage Site at the Sturtfortine. The Stone Age period. Earlier Stone Age. Some hominids began to manufacture stone tools about 2.6 million years ago, thus beginning the earlier Stone Age, known as the Older One industry. Most of the earliest tools were rough cobble cores and simple flakes. The flakes were used for such activities as cutting meat and skinning animals. At present, it is unclear which hominids made the one tools. Many scientists believe Homo habilis produced them. Stumpfontein is one of the few sites anywhere to yield an in situ assemblage of older one tools. This rare occurrence further increases the importance of the World Heritage Site. By about 1.4 million years ago, hominids started producing more recognizable stone artifacts such as hand axes, cleavers, and core tools. Although serving many purposes, the Archulian tools were probably designed to butcher large animals such as elephants, rhino, and hippo, which had died of natural causes. Because these animals were particularly dangerous, hominids were probably not yet able to hunt them. At this time, men and our ancestors were most likely specialized scavengers. Such scavenging yielded enormous amounts of protein, which was critical in the evolution of the human brain. The hominids that made Acheulean tools can confidently be identified as Homo ergaster, formerly as Homo erectus. Acheulean artifacts seldom occurred in cave sites until the end of the earliest Stone Age, about 400,000 to 250,000 years ago. But some have been found on Sturmfontein and Schwarzkopf. Most Acheulean material is found outside of caves because our ancestors had not mastered fire. One exception appeared to be Schwarzkopf, but the date of some 1 million years ago is controversial. Whatever the date, the controlled use of fire had certainly been mastered by the Middle Stone Age. So we will proceed to the Middle Stone Age. The repeated use of caves by 250,000 years ago, the beginning of the Middle Stone Age, indicates that our ancestors had developed the concept of a home base in hearths, showed that they could make fire. Furthermore, toolkits included prepared cores, parallel-sided blades, and triangular points. These points were hafted to make spears used to hunt large grazers such as wild beasts, hartebeests, and eland. By this time then, our ancestors had been accomplished hunters. These early hunters are classified as archaean humans. By 100,000 years ago, they were anatomically fully modern. The degree to which their behavior was equally modern, however, is still under investigation. Indeed, the MSA is particularly important today for this study. Fully modern human behavior, such as abstract thought, complex politics, and kinship systems, require the use of true language. Other animals communicate, but only humans have the ability to string together sounds in unlimited combinations. Unfortunately, archaeologists cannot study directly abstract thought, kinship systems, or language. This is why small artifacts are so important. Among other artifacts, compound tools such as hafted harpoons and compound glues for hafting spear points indicate complex thought. Evidence for these cognitive advancements comes from Sibudu Cave near Durban and Lombos Cave in the Cape, both dated to about 70,000 years ago. These were important steps in the cultural evolution of humanity. In addition, the widespread use of red ochre, presumably as body paint, also shows that the Middle Stone Age behavior had become more human. The recent finds of decorated archery at bombos and decorated ostrich eggshells at deep roots also indicate, further demonstrates this point. Important displays of the Middle Stone Age artifacts are open to the public at the Ezekiel Museum in Cape Town and the Origin Central of Johannesburg. So we're going to proceed to the later Stone Age. By 25,000 years ago, in the beginning of the later Stone Age, archaeological deposits contain a diagnostic tool that includes small scrapers and segments manufactured from fine-grained materials. By this time, the later Stone Age peoples were hunting small game with bows and poisoned arrows. Furthermore, the numerous shell lineage which dot the coastline indicate attest to the exploitation of marine resources at different seasons. In addition to bow hunting and shellfish collection, human behavior was recognizably modern in other ways. Uniquely, human traits such as rock art and purposeful burials with ornaments were a particular regular practice. In southern Africa, these people were the ancestors of the sand. Sand rock art has a well-earned reputation for aesthetic appeal and symbolic complexity. David Lewis Williams and his team have been able to unravel this complexity, at least in outline, through the careful use of some 13,000 pages of text recorded in the late 19th century in English and the Sand language. Rather than a record of daily life, the art is essentially religious. Among other aspects, it expresses beliefs about the role of shamans and Germanic medicine people in controlling brain and game, and in healing through the famous trance dance. Trance images figure prominently along with animals of power such as the eland, elephant, and rhino. Overall, Southern Africa probably has the largest corpus of rock art anywhere in the world, and the Drakensberg contains some of the finest. Because of its richness, it is part of the Columba Drakensberg World Heritage Site. Important examples of engravings and paintings are on display at Ezekiel Museum, Cape Town, and Nader Museum. Prior to Marisburg and the Origins Central, Johannesburg. Various cave sites are also open to the public indicated. So it has the Paris pastoralist, the relationship between sand hunter-gatherers and Cove pastorers is the subject of current research. This question is of interest because it was the Cove who first traded cattle to the Cape Dutch in the 17th century. The main question concerned the Cove origins. Some believe they were local hunter-gatherers who acquired sheep and cattle, while others think they brought domestic animals with them from East Africa. Ultimately, the answer will involve linguistic and genetic data as well as archaeology. Both San and Khoikhoi were in southern Africa where the first Bantu-speaking farmers arrived about 2,000 years ago. So the pre-colonial farmers, according to historical linguistics, the Bantu language family originated in West Africa along the border of present-day Nigeria and Cameroon. Generally, the evidence suggests that between 200 BC and AD 200, the ancestors of Eastern Bantu-speaking people moved out of this homeland into East and Southern Africa. These people cultivated sorghum and millets, herded cattle, sheep and goats, and manufactured iron tools and copper ornaments. As a rule, these homesteads were sited near water and good soils that could be cultivated with iron hoes. Because metalworking represents a totally new technology, some archaeologists call this period the Iron Age. The first 900 years are known as the Early Iron Age, while the people themselves are sometimes referred to as early farming communities. As culturalists, these farming people lived in semi-permanent homesteads comprising pole and dagger houses and grain bins arranged around animal barns. This arrangement, known as the central cattle pattern, was characteristic of Eastern Bantu speakers who preferred cattle for bride wealth, traced their blood from their father, practiced male hereditary leadership, and had a positive attitude about the role of ancestors in daily life. One early family community settlement near Lindenburg yielded artifacts related to the spiritual world. 7 ceramic heads had been deposited in a deep storage pit some 1,200 years ago. These helmet sculptures each had eyes, a mouth, and other human-like features. 2 were large enough to cover a person's head, but the others have been mounted on poles. These sculptures were most likely used in initiation ceremonies of some sort. Replicas are on display at the Lindenburg Museum, and the origins are at the Instituto Museum in Cape Town. Throughout the Iron Age, climatic fluctuations played a significant role in structuring human geography. So when the EIA people first entered southern Africa, the climate was warmer and wetter than today. Between about AD 700 to 900, the climate was colder and drier than at present, and the EIA farmers would have retreated to some optimal areas. The climate became bitter again sometime during the Middle Iron Age, between AD 900 to 1300. At about AD 1700, however, the Little Ice Age reached its nadir, and its impact upon human population was particularly severe. Besides these changes, the Iron Age farmers had to contend with unpredictable droughts. When the droughts were particularly severe, from 3 to 5 years in a row, rainmakers would perform special rituals on special hills, and the common people would follow the various cleansing rituals. Evidently, some people had to burn their grain bins down and build new ones on top. These burnt structures are not as common as archaeologists once thought, and they can now be used as a cultural proxy for severe drought. The ultimate cause of droughts was probably it has natural southern oscillation activity, because this is the most important mechanism driven climatic variability in the southern hemisphere. According to the data for South America, the ENSO activity was particularly frequent during the last 2,500 years. Climate and geography played a significant role in the development of greater social complexity in the Limpopo Valley, located at the junction of Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. The Shashi and Limpopo rivers became the Nile of the South Africa during the Middle Iron Age. Regular flooding at this time made intensive agriculture possible. The resultant population increase, along with surplus trade from the Indian Ocean gold and ivory trade, led to development of marked social classes and sacred leaderships at Mapungubi. As a result, Mapungubi was the first indigenous civilization in southern Africa, predating even Great Zimbabwe. The famous gold rhinoceros from Congo is a national icon and an inspiration for South Africa's highest civilian award because of its significance to African prehistory in general. The Mapungwe landscape became a World Heritage Site in 2003. The landscape is also a national park and accessible to the public. Its new interpretive center won an international prize. Treasures from Mapungwe are also on display at the Mapungwe Museum, University of Pretoria. Another facility in Pretoria, the National Cultural History Museum, displays a large number of clay figurines from an early initiation site near Mapungwe. Shortly after the abandonment of the Mapungwe, the ancestors of the present-day Sotho Botswana moved south from East Africa. Archaeologists have reported the earliest Sotho Botswana sites characterized by a ceramic style called Moloko in the Limpopo province. Somewhat later, Sotho Botswana people moved south into a large part of Untitled in the Northwest province. About 100 years earlier, the ancestors of Nguni-speaking people had moved from East Africa into the KwaZulu-Natal region. These late Iron Age farmers left huge numbers of stone wall settlements throughout South Africa. Southern Guinea built the first stone wall landed in about AD 1300 in the Midlands of KwaZulu-Natal, known as Moore Park. This first wall stands in defensive positions on hilltops and spurs. The front-back orientation of these settlements conforms to the shape of the terrain. Somewhat later, a few northern Nguni moved up into the Free State High Veld and built circular settlements. The best known are near the hill of Schwarzschild, which has given its name to the walling type. Somewhat later still, these Gunyan people moved across the Vaal River into the hilly areas of Gauteng and the Northwest provinces, introducing the practice of Sotho Botswana people. By the late 18th century, Western Sotho Botswana had created the Molokwane type, best known for the site with the same name as the Rustenburg. Some Molokwane settlements were huge aggregations, housing up to 20,000 people. From this time on, urban settlements became characteristic of Sotho Botswana life. And so it goes on a couple of more paragraphs, and I just had to take a little breather because it's a lot of information. The huge Sotho Botswana settlements are also a characteristic of the usual period known as the Defacane time of trouble. The causes of Defacane or Quane are controversial. Formerly, historians began the period in 1821 when the Luhi moved to the KwaZulu-Natal and attacked the Tolwa on the plateau. In this interpretation, Shaka of the Zulu was one of the prime causes. Recent work, however, has shown that Shaka was a result, not a cause, and the causal processes had begun a few decades earlier among the Sotho Botswana as well as Nguni. The causal processes included an extended period of high rainfall, the introduction of maize, and consequent population increase. Competition for the ivory trade in the Sotho Botswana area, competition for cattle in the KwaZulu-Natal, hunting on horseback with guns in the Congo, and finally, a serious drought that led to an agricultural collapse. oral traditions of widespread famine, cannibalism, and total annihilation of enemies at this time indicates an ecological imbalance between people and resources. In response to this chaos, Toscana tended to live on hilltops and aggregate in large settlements for mutual protection. These defensive moves may have begun as early as 1780. At about 1826, Kazi moved into the Magaliegburg to escape Shaka. The Kazi entries to Gatine marks the beginning of the historic period. So the historic period, as it mentions, with the Kazi established his first headquarters in the Heidelberg region and then moved further west somewhere near Pretoria. With a large and powerful force, he defeated, subjugated, or absorbed local Toscana. In about 1830, the Zulu attacked Kazi, so he moved his headquarters west near Zeres. Thus, Kazi only stayed in the Pretoria area for 4 to 5 years. Even so, his presence made such an impact that most European landowners in the region created all stonewalling to him. In both Gatine and around Zeres, Kazi had removed enemies and consolidated followers so that he was surrounded by uninhabited land. Consequently, the land appeared empty when treacherous crossed the Vaal in 1836. Ultimately, the treacherous chased Kazi out of South Africa, making it possible for Boers to settle permanently north of the Vaal. So that is some information that I pulled up in regards to South Africa. And it's a lot of information. And with this particular podcast, I wanted to speak on the ancient history. So let me see if I'm able to pull up some more information in regards to South Africa that is more up-to-date information, because as you know, you begin to do some research, it's going to be some extensive. So I am on Britannica. It says South Africa, the southernmost country on the African continent, renowned for its varied topography, great natural beauty, and cultural diversity, all of which have made the country a favorite destination for travelers since the legal ending of apartheid in 1994. And let me make sure I'm pronouncing that word correctly. Give me just a moment as I pull up some information. And I want to make sure I pronouncing that word correctly. Apartheid. Okay. South Africa's remoteness, it lies thousands of miles distant from major African cities such as Lagos and Cairo, and more than 6,000 miles away from the most of North America and Eastern Asia, where its major trading partners are located, helped reinforce the official system of apartheid for a large part of the 20th century. In that system, the government controlled by the minority white population enforced segregation between government-defined races in housing, education, and virtually all spheres of life, creating in effect three nations, one of whites consisting of people primarily of British and Dutch or Boer ancestry, who struggled for generations to gain political supremacy, a struggle that reaches violent apex with the South African War of 1899 to 1902. One of the blacks consisted of such peoples as the sand hunter-gatherers of the northwestern desert, the Zulu herders of the eastern plateaus, and the Khoikhoi farmers of the southern Cape regions, and one of the coloreds, which are mixed-race people, and ethnic Asians, which comprises of Indians, Malays, Filipinos, and Chinese. The apartheid regime was disdained and even virulently opposed by much of the world community. And by the mid-1980s, South Africa found itself among the world's pariah states, the subject of economic and cultural boycotts that affected almost every aspect of life. During this era, the South African poet Mungane Wally Surratt remarked, eventually forced to confront the untenable nature of ethnic separatism in a multicultural land, the South African government of F.W. de Klerk from 1989 to 1994 began to repeal apartheid laws. That process in turn set in motion a transition towards universal suffrage and a true electoral democracy, which culminated in the 1994 election of the government led by the black majority under the leadership of the long-imprisoned dissident Nelson Mandela. As this transition arrests, the country has made remarkable progress in establishing social equity in a short period of time. South Africa has 3 cities that serves as capitals. We have Pretoria, which is executive, Cape Town, which is legislative, and Bloemfontein, which is judicial. Johannesburg, the largest urban area in the country and the center of commerce, lies at the heart of the populous Gauteng province. Durban, a port on the Indian Ocean, is a major industrial center. East London and Port Elizabeth, both of which lie along the country's southern coast, are important commercial, industrial, and cultural centers. Today, South Africa enjoys a relatively stable mixed economy that draws on its fertile agricultural lands, abundant mineral resources, tourist attractions, and highly evolved intellectual capital. Greater political equality and economic stability, however, do not necessarily mean social tranquility. South African society at the start of the 21st century continues to face deep challenges: rising crime rates, ethnic tensions, great disparities in housing and educational opportunities, and the AIDS pandemic. So in regards to land, as mentioned, South Africa is bordered by Namibia to the northwest, of Botswana and Zimbabwe to the north, and by Mozambique and Swaziland to the northeast and east. Lesotho, an independent country, is an enclave in the eastern part of the republic. The term is surrounded by South African territory. South Africa's coastlands border the Indian Ocean to the southeast and the Atlantic Ocean to the southwest. The country possesses 2 small sub-Arctic islands, Prince Edward and Marion, situated in the Indian Ocean about 1,200 miles southeast of Cape Town. The former South African possession of Walvis Bay on the Atlantic coast, some 400 miles north of the Orange River, became part of Namibia in 1994. Relief of South Africa. A plateau covers the largest part of the country, dominating topography, It is separated from surrounding areas of general lower elevation by the Great Escarpment. The plateau consists almost entirely of very old rock of the Columba system, which formed from late Carboniferous epoch to the late Triassic epoch. The plateau, generally highest in the east, drops from elevation of more than 8,000 feet in the basaltic in the South region to about 2,000 feet in the sandy Kalahari in the west. The central part of the plateau comprises of high vale, which reaches between 4,000 and 6,000 feet in elevation. South of the Orange River lies the Great Peru region. The Great Escarpment, known by a variety of local names such as the Columba and the Frankenster, forms the longest continuous topographic feature in South Africa and provides scenery of great beauty. The encouragement is part of the Columba and Frankenster Park, which was designed or designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2000. It runs southward from the far northeast, where it's generally known as the Transvaal Drakensberg. It is there in the KwaZulu-Natal province that the country's highest point in Jesufi is found. Farther south, the Incarsburg forms the boundary first between KwaZulu-Natal and Free State provinces, and then between KwaZulu-Natal and Lesotho. There it reaches elevations of nearly 11,000 feet, including some of the country's highest peaks. So I'm going to, because it goes on and on and on in regards to the land, the drainage, the soils, the climate, and things of that nature. So I'm going to go down a little further, because it's good to know, the agriculture, the climate, conservation, and things like that. So I'm going to go a little further down where it mentions about people and religion and languages. That's what I'm going to do. This, as you begin to do some research, a lot of it's going to be very extensive information. Okay, so it says government determined racial and ethnic classification embodied in the Population Registration Act in effect from 1950 to 1991 was crucial in determining the status of all South Africans under the Access Act. The Act divided South Africans at birth into four racial categories: black, white, colored, which is mixed race, and Asian. Though these classifications were largely arbitrary, based on considerations such as family background and cultural acceptance, as well as appearance. The original Khoi and San peoples of South Africa scarcely exist as distinct groups inside the country today. Many intermarried with other African peoples who arrived before European conquest, and other intermarried with Malagasy and Southeast Asian slaves under the white rule to form the majority of the colored population. Bantu-speaking Africans entered the area from the north roughly 1,800 years ago, and their descendants today constitute more than 3/4 of South African population. So it does have a pie chart here where it mentions that as of 2019, in this particular area, you have when it says 80.7% are considered white, 8.8% is considered mixed white and black, 7.9% is considered white, and 2.6% is considered Asian or other. The population formerly classified as colored descended from Khoikhoi and San peoples, which were slaves imported by the Dutch from Madagascar, and what are now Malaysia and Indonesia. Europeans and Bantu speaking Africans. Several distinct sub-ethnic groups can still be identified, such as the Malays, who largely originated from Indonesia, Muslim slaves, and the Griquas, who trace their origins to the specific historic Khoikhoi community. While some Malays and Griquas have continued to identify themselves as colors, others who were so classified by the Appleseed government have rejected the label entirely. In many respects, they cannot be distinguished culturally or physically from the white population. Those formerly classified as colors are concentrated in the western half of the country, particularly in western and northern Cape provinces and the westernmost parts of eastern Cape province, where they form a majority in most districts. South Africans of Indian descent, who were classified under the Appleseed as, let me make sure I'm reading this word correctly, because it keeps popping up and I want to make sure I am reading that word correctly. I am chopping up a lot of these words. Let's see. Apartheid. Okay. So, South Africans of Indian descent who were classified under the apartheid as Asian formed a minority. They went to South Africa originally as indentured workers imported by the British to the former Natal colony beginning in the 1850s and were followed by a smaller group of immigrant traders later in the 19th century. Most of them now live in KwaZulu-Natal and to a lesser extent in Gauteng, Limpopo, and Mpumalanga provinces. Almost all Indian South Africans are urban dwellers. Small communities of other ethnic Asians, including the Chinese, live in some of the cities. Most white South Africans are descendants of European settlers, primarily from Great Britain, Germany, and the Netherlands, who began to migrate to South Africa in the mid-17th century. So it goes into the languages, and I'm going to end and close out in regards to, this is very extensive, very interesting, very extensive. I'm going to close out with it towards religion. I'm going to bring it to a close. So, the languages of South Africa, the black African population is heterogeneous, falling mainly into four linguistic categories. The largest is the Nguni, including various peoples who speak Swati, as well as those who speak languages that take their names from the peoples by whom they are primarily spoken. So we got the Bele, Xhosa, Zulu, Xhosa language. They constitute more than half the population of the country and form the majority in many eastern and coastal regions, as well as in the industrial Gauteng province. The second largest in Soto, Botswana, again including various people whose language names are derived from the names of people who primarily speak them. Soto, Pedi, and Tswana. Speakers of Soto and Tswana languages constitute a majority in many high-vale areas. The other two primary linguistic groups are the Tsonga speakers concentrated in Limpopo and Mpumalanga provinces, and Venda speakers, located largely in the Limpopo provinces. White South Africans form two main language groups. More than half of the African speakers, the descendants of mostly Dutch, French, and German settlers. The remainder consists largely of English speakers who are descended mainly from British colonists, though there are a sizable minority of Portuguese and smaller groups of Italians and others. Most of the population, formerly classified as coloreds, speaks Afrikaans or lesser extant English. So you have 11 languages as it mentions here. They hold official status under the 1996 Constitution, and you have additional languages that it mentions here in regards to the languages that are spoke. Now, in terms of religion, it says the majority of South Africans are Christians. The largest established Christian denomination directly rooted in European settlement, but now growing members from all ethnic groups are the Methodist, Roman Catholic, Anglican, and Dutch Reformed churches. A large number of people follow independent African Christian churches, which vary in size from a few to millions of members. These faiths differ widely in their degree of theological orthodoxy or heterodoxy from traditional Christian beliefs, but they tend to be more open to aspects of indigenous culture and religion, and to emphasize physical and spiritual healing. There is a sizable minority that adheres to traditional beliefs. Other religions are Hinduism, among the majority of Indians, Islam, among many Indians and Malays, and Judaism, among minority of white population. So it says that there's a pie chart here. 86% are Christian, 5.4% is traditional, 1.9% is Muslim, and 6.7% is considered other. So it does have a variety of other things here that maybe of interest. And again, I'm on Botanica. It does go in terms of their finance, in terms of the financial system, which mentions that they have a well developed financial system. An active capital market exists, organized around the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Trade, because of its dependence on foreign trade, South Africa's economy is sensitive to global economic conditions. Precious metals and base metals have been leading exports. Agricultural goods and military equipment also play an important role. The country's major imports are chemicals, chemical products, and motor vehicles. South Africa's main trading partners include China, the United States, Germany, and Japan. Regional trade in South Africa is increasingly important, especially due to Southern African Development Community. So that is some very interesting information in regards to the cultural life. It mentions here blending Western technology with indigenous technology, Western traditions with African and Asian traditions. South Africa is a study in contrast. It also provides lessons in how cultures can sometimes blend, sometimes collide. For example, within a short distance of another can be found in the villas of South Africa's white elite and the tar paper stacks of black day laborers. Office buildings with the most sophisticated electronic wiring and one-room houses that lack electricity. A great gulf still exists between the white minority and the black majority in matters of education and economic opportunity. Yet South Africa is making steady progress and erases some of the historic disparities and their consequences. Daily life is better for most of its people in culture and the arts, which sometimes were forced into exile, are flourishing in the free climate of the post-apartheid era. And it goes over some of their customs as they are everywhere in the world. Patterns of daily life in South Africa is conditioned by social class, ethnicity, religion, and residence. The life of a black diamond miner in Limpopo province is much different from that of an Indian shopkeeper in Durban, an Afrikaner office worker in Johannesburg, or a teacher of English extraction in Cape Town. As the government struggles to expand the economy in order to provide equally for all citizens, great disparities continues to exist. Yet all these people are likely to enjoy much the same pleasures. The company of family and friends, films from studios of Johannesburg and Hollywood alike, music and dance, and visits to South Africa's magnificent national parks and scenic landscapes. It says the great mixture of cultures makes for a wide variety of food choices in the country, from the traditional food of various cultures to the cosmopolitan cuisine that is available in many large cities throughout the world. African food is centered around vegetables, with maize as an important staple, often in the form of porridge known as mealie-pap, a dish made from broken dried corn kernels, sugar beans, butter, onions, potatoes, chilies, and lemon is called Kusho. It is still possible to visit a Shibian, an African tavern, where beer is home brewed. Dutch and English settlers introduced sausages and bobotie, a meat pie made with minced meat that has been cooked with brown sugar, apricots, and raisins, milk, soap, mashed bread, and curry flavoring. The Portuguese introduced various fish dishes to the country. The Indian influence added spices and even samosas. Savory pastries popular as a snack. All South Africans enjoy the braai, a South African barbecue. Beef, chicken, lamb, pork, ostrich, and other game meats are savory, although meat consumption is limited in many places because of its expense. Among the holidays, you have South Africa celebrate Human Rights Day on March 21st, Freedom Day on April 27th, National Women's Day on August the 9th, Heritage Day on September the 24th, and the Day of Reconciliation on December the 16th. So that's just, it's just some very, very, in terms of their music, many popular South African arts represent a fusion of cultural influences, such as townships, jazz, and pop music, religious choral music, and so-called traditional dances performed competitively by mine workers in decidedly untraditional settings. Others are innovations created in response to new circumstances, such as the lifeless song poems composed by subtle migrant workers to express and comment upon the life of miners. Because miners were frequently so far away from home, traditional rituals had to be performed during the weekends or on holidays. Mining companies often sponsored dances as an outlet for the men, and tourists came to view the exotic African musical forms. South African music is a fusion of various musical styles, such as traditional indigenous music, jazz, Christian religious music, and forms of popular music from the United States. These combinations are evident in music of such performers as the African jazz pioneers, Lady Smith Black, Bazo, Miriam Makeba, Hugh Marcella Killa, and others. Black and white musicians were segregated during the episode, and I keep with the same word. They still collaborated on the occasion. A notable example of Johnny Clegg is some of the music. So it goes on extensively, talks about art and literature and a whole variety of things. And it's a lot of information, some very extensive information. It does mention in regards to segregation, which I will go down a little farther with that. It says in the first 2 decades of the Union, segregation became the distinctive feature of the South African political, social, and economic lives. As whites addressed the native questions, blacks were re-tribalized and their ethnic differences highlighted. The statutes provided for racial separation in industrial, territorial, administrative, and residential spheres. The barriers of legislation was partly the product of reactionary attitudes inherited from the past and partly an effort to regulate class and race relations during a period of rapid industrialization when the black population was growing steadily. So it just goes a little further. It mentions in 1911 Mines and Works Act and its 1926 successor reserved certain jobs in mining and the roadways for white workers. The Native Land Act in 1913 defined less than 1/10 of South Africa as black reserves and prohibited any purchase of or lease of land by blacks outside of the reserve. The law also restricted the terms of tenure under which blacks could live on white-owned farms. The Native Act of 1923 segregated urban residential space and created influx control to reduce access to cities by blacks. Herzog proposed increasing the reserve areas and removing black voters in the Cape from the common roll in 1926. Aims that were finally realized through the representation of Native Act in 1936. That's now voted on a separate roll to elect 3. So it just goes on and on and on in terms of the history and things that transpired, during the history of South Africa. And it's very extensive. So I'm going to bring this presentation to a close because I am approaching an hour. But I will be talking on a variety of ancient history as well as history, more up-to-date history of many cultures, customs, and religions and beliefs of many countries around Africa and presumably around the world. Okay. So I thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you're welcome to comment below. Till then, have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.